Hi, and welcome to AppSecCon 2022. In this upcoming panel discussion, we're going to be talking about practical approaches to managing software supply chain risks. We have three speakers on this panel. We have Varun Badwa, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager, Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto Networks. We have Max Kowalski, who is Managing Director of Cybersecurity and Privacy at Grant Thornton. And we have Gregory Rick, Associate Vice President of Cloud and Application Security at Nationwide. Let's go ahead and check it out.
Great to be here with you, Greg and Varun. Appreciate you joining us today. So just a quick recap of what I'm hoping we're going to have an engaging discussion about. So the topic broadly is software supply chain risks. But to me, that means, how do you manage risks with software and code that does not belong to you, that you have not developed, that is owned and operated by some third party that may use a fourth, fifth, nth party? So some of the subtopic is, I'll address as at least my perspective on how do we get consensus on risk tolerance as we think about the applications that we use from third parties. Maybe we could talk about some of the ways in which we can tailor our diligence approaches based on, either the criticality of the software or, the extent to which the business relies on it. And then what I'm very interested to hear, particularly Greg, your perspective is how do we avoid the whole risk acceptance, exceptions traps that, once a policy is published that we all fall into. So I guess I'll kick off. My name is Max Kowalski, Managing Director with Grant Thornton. Spent some time prior to joining GT in a deputy CISO role for City of New York. One of my items in the portfolio was application security that included third-party software. So, definitely have some experience grappling with the problem. And, I'm not sure the industry as a whole has come up with good answers. So maybe I'll share how I've come to think about this problem set. So I think the most important thing as we think about software supply chain risks is getting the organization on the same page when it comes to risk tolerance. So, when we rely on third-party applications is understanding how important that application is to the business. Like, can we tolerate downtime? Can the business tolerate this application going down for an extended period of time? That's number one. Number two is, what is the sensitivity of the data that's being collected by that application? So, is it publicly available data? Is it confidential? Is it restricted data that falls under some, other regulatory compliance regime? As you go down up those steps, obviously you should be more concerned about the way that software is developed and deployed. And the third piece is, almost irrespective of the first two, is this application connected to our other critical systems? In other words, can a threat actor get in and pivot into our internal network from that application? And that application may not be all that important to the business. It may not have any confidential and sensitive data, but if the third piece is a check, we'd probably want to take a very close look at that application to get some level of confidence and comfort that that application is not going to be used against us. So with that, maybe I'll kind of close my opening remarks and pass it on to Varun and then to Greg.
Thanks, Max. And I think, again, just for everybody, my name is Varun Badwa, founder and CEO of Endor Labs. It's interesting, Max, because I started my career 12 years ago in a Big Four consulting organization doing vendor risk management. And so as I've seen this world evolve, I think what's been fascinating is we have been so focused on third-party risk management as it relates to our commercial vendors. And the procurement teams do a fine job of kind of running the process, orchestrating the reviews, the pen tests, receiving SOC 2 type 2 reports and other things. That's great, right? Our front door of our house is protected. But here we have a back door, which is fast evolving to be even a bigger entry point into your enterprise, which is the usage of open source software. And what's really interesting is we have all these guardrails and controls that you can't sell into my organization unless you go through this process of vendor risk. But on this side, the developers are bringing in whatever packages they find useful to them fairly quickly with very little diligence. And
as do software suppliers, third-party software suppliers. I don't think it's a problem that's unique to our in-house developers.
Absolutely, right? So any development team, in-house, or you're developing software that you commercially sell, you're relying heavily, and statistics out there say 70, 80, or even 90% of your application code these days is basically reused components off the internet. And we know very little about these people behind these projects that we're trusting. We know very little about their culture and philosophy of security. And most importantly, as we have learned the hard way when Log4j and Spring4Shell like events have occurred, we don't even know where these problems and these packages exist across our portfolio of custom applications as well as licensed third-party applications. So I think
dependencies of dependencies down into the sixth layer.
It's painful. It's painful, and I'm sure Greg will give a real world perspective here momentarily from the nationwide perspective. But to me, that is the biggest attack vector today that is fairly exposing us, significantly exposing us. And is fairly underinvested in from a security perspective. Because the last point I'll mention there is the unidimensional way the industry thinks about security of open source is by tracking known vulnerabilities. And to me, that's too late in the process. We've got to be able to make better decisions about what packages to use, and understand the operational and security risks of introducing them into our environment. But over to you, Greg.
Let me, if I could just interject very quickly, and this is a little bit off the script, so apologies, Varun. But I know you've sold software prior to your current role. I believe you're involved in a startup that sells software or will be selling software soon. I don't know the details. You could certainly provide those to us, but if I were the buyer of your software solution, whether that's, as a service, what level of, put it another way, how would you give me the level of confidence and comfort that the software that you're selling to me does not suffer from the kind of issues that you just explained?
There's going to be a lovely topic I'm sure we're going to touch, whether we like it or not, which is software bill of materials. If I can tell you everything that's inside of my software, and I can assure you that it is what I'm telling you it actually is, which is the hard part, then I think you'll have a little bit more trust and confidence in what we deliver to you. But I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment.
100%.
Greg,
thanks, friend.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, Greg Rick, I lead the Cloud and Application Security Program for Nationwide Insurance. I've been in the role for about 2 years now, but I've been at Nationwide for about 16 years, mostly in information security. And prior to Nationwide, I was at American Electric Power for a little over 8 years. I have been in several different security roles, but I have been in the third party, like Varun. I led our third party program for a couple of years. Completely agree. It's a scary place. We're so dependent. Just to give perspective, we have thousands of applications in our environment. We have, probably over 250 dev lines. In technology, we have I think around 8,000 humans between contractors and associates, and across our applications. Our developers are using north of 1 million open source packages within their applications. And you look at applications, a typical application could be 70% executed by open source software. So it's been a huge accelerator for application development, but however, we're so dependent on the people that manage these applications on the security of it, and we have very little insight other than CVEs. NVD and CVSS scores and CVEs is pretty much the only way we can right now measure the riskiness of those packages. To kind of jump into tolerance, Max, I really liked your perspective, but when you look at it from company our size and the scale, you really can't make those decisions easily app by app, package by package, when you're talking, millions, over 1 million packages and as many applications we're looking at. So our initial tolerance has been set on CVE rating for the most part. So through our policy, we've set SLAs by criticality, by CVSS score, and we've set the tolerance and appetite at saying, all right, if it's above this level, our tolerance is we want it mitigated within 60 days. If it's next level, it could be 120 days, and so on and so forth. And what's been most successful is finding ways that we can enforce it through automation. The only place that we've been super successful is in the container space, where we automatically block early in the development lifecycle all the way up through prod if it's above a certain severity rating. So that can help the conversation down the road. So if the developer isn't able to use a vulnerable package very early in the development cycle, they're likely going to find either upgrade the library or package and not need an exception, and we don't have to do that analysis later on what's the business criticality of the application, what data is it housing, so on and so forth. However, so what we do have that type of tolerance discussions if they are not able to meet those SLAs. And so then what we do is we have an exception review board. And what's been super successful is bringing the business unit along with our business facing security team to those discussions. And our CISO sits in the exception review board, and we have a conversation and we talk about all those risk factors. Exactly what you went over, Max. We talk about what's the business criticality, what kind of data, what network segmentation do we have, and then we determine what's our appetite tolerance for how many days we want that exception to live, and then manage it that way.
So, Greg,
go ahead.
Sorry, if I could interject. So is that a process that you use for applications that you develop in-house, whether these are developers that are FTEs or nationwide, or maybe contractors or consultants? What about applications that the businesses want to go out and procure and deploy in the cloud?
Yep, definitely. So some of it, like if it's a SaaS, we don't have that much visibility. We have to rely on contractual controls. But if it's commercial software where they give us the binaries and we install it in-house, we scan what we can, especially if it's a container environment or others. We have tools that we can give this insight, and we follow the exact same process. And the business unit is pretty much responsible for working with the vendor and adhering to the SLAs that we've established.
Yeah, and even I would posit, even if it's a SaaS solution, the same kind of due diligence approaches should apply, right? And that means getting into the policy. And the policy is really from my perspective, a policy is strong not when it's well worded and it's well articulated and, it has robust requirements, but a policy is strong when it's been developed through consensus with the business units and not just security and not just IT.
In a way to monitor it too. Like right now we have no way of monitoring the SaaS. So, like Varun talking about SBOM, software bill of material, if we required them to provide that, and we could monitor their software bill of materials, that would give us more insight, and along with the binaries that we install, and that's our vision, definitely.
And I think what I was talking about risk tolerance, what I was getting to is, I think as a community we need to get to a place that even when we're buying a SaaS solution, when the potential impact is significant enough to cause as a security practitioners, significant heartache and sleepless nights. And also the business, of course, there could be revenue generating implications for software that goes down. The same standards should apply, right? That should be part of the procurement that, at the highest level, we should be able to know what the SBOM for that application is.
Agreed.
Be able to, enroll it into a manual penetration testing program and test it without warning in production, right? At any given time or at the time of our choosing.
So Max, just playing devil's advocate on SBOMs, one of the things that keeps me up at night in kind of relation to SBOMs is, let's say Greg has 1,000 vendors and 1,000 vendors are shipping software, let's not even say weekly or daily, monthly average. Now you got 12,000 SBOM versions that are getting delivered to you somehow. We don't even know how we'll exchange that information appropriately, but you have all of this information. You file it under a desk and take it out when you need it. What is the automation? What is the actionability of this data? There's a lot of work to be done as an industry to solve this, both as a producer of SBOMs as well as a consumer of SBOMs, and not to kind of overwhelm the vendors with us asking questions as consumers of that data. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up and see what thoughts both of you have on that.
Yeah, we experienced that firsthand with Log4j. I mean, we partnered heavily with our procurement organization, and I mean, I'm sure we could tell the vendors were just getting hit by all of their customers, and we were getting canned responses, and they were giving us legal responses, and we couldn't get good insights, and we were tracking it. I mean, a little more than spreadsheets, but effectively, I mean, it's questionnaires and
it was very, very difficult to find out
exactly
who was impacted and how.
And our confidence level is, pretty low from a vendor perspective. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll take that next. So, the piece that I was talking about, the risk tolerance and the importance of the application to the business and, all the other factors, right? So I would argue that we don't want an SBOM for every single application that we procure from third parties. Right. But if we agree that, that there are certain applications that fall within the category of that highest potential risk, and that is the level of due diligence that we want to do on them. So we may, in my prior organization, we have over 4,000 applications. Not every application I would want an SBOM for, right? There may be, 100, maybe 200 of those that would meet that threshold for that kind of due diligence.
Right. Yeah, and I think even at that level, I think we need a more systemic, automated way to kind of securely exchange that information, securely interact, follow through. And honestly, I think the big question from a consulting perspective is going to be, can I trust an SBOM? So let's say a developer, a kind of organization.
How do you verify it? Yeah.
It's a trust but verify. Yeah. Now are we going to see an audit mechanism? Like this is going to be a new emerging standard, like a SOC 2 for SBOM audits that people will say, here's my SBOM and here's a consulting organization that stamped it and said, yes, it is what I'm telling you it is. So it's going to be a lot of work ahead for us as an industry.
Yeah, I mean, and even if software composition analysis, if you are a software supplier, a SaaS provider, and somebody comes to you and says, Remy, let me run my SCA tool on your code, what's your response going to be?
Yeah,
it would be a difficult negotiation, right?
Yeah, very difficult.
So, Greg, maybe another question to you as you work with third-party software providers. What are the type of approaches to due diligence on their software that you guys employ that you think is successful, but also allows you to scale and in terms of putting to use the resources that you have at your disposal without creating work that you're not going to be able to meet?
Yeah, I mean, the due diligence process is probably very similar to any third-party risk program. I mean, we take, SOC 2 and other evidence, but we'd love to get evidence that they've done some kind of penetration testing, that they have the tools, that they've ran the SCA, software composition analysis type tools and everything against it, and provide that evidence. In the future, we're looking at, can we put contractual language in place to obligate them to provide us an SBOM? I think that's the future. But how do we get that? And I think Varun was spot on is do we want to house that? Are we going to have to protect that data? Are they going to want to give us, especially commercial software vendors see that as secret sauce and could be intellectual property. And then how do we kind of integrate it? I almost see it like a CMDB challenge. It's like configuration management, right? You got to tie it to assets, and you've got to version it and manage it. And it's going to be a tremendous challenge.
Have you been able to negotiate terms with any of your software or suppliers where you actually would reserve the right to unleash your own, red team or penetration testing team on a given application?
Not our own, probably, but we have negotiated some cases where especially if it's commercial that we install in house, we might do some testing on our side, but on their network that we would prefer to go through a third party, mainly from liability reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead, Vern.
No, I was just going to say, having been on the other side of selling software to enterprises, my point of view was we were very open. So we, of course, had our SOC 2. We had an independent third party doing pen test reports every 6 months, producing those for our customers. But we did give customers the right to conduct testing with prior approval and notification. Something that we would mutually agree upon, the scope and kind of the environment and all of that. But to us, I think transparency and kind of earning a customer's trust is key. And I think more vendors need to be more open to that, versus kind of just putting blockers in front of customers, because it's not a great way to earn trust.
I couldn't agree more with you, Vern.
Yeah, I've seen some pattern where some security vendors, I think there's one in particular that published their SBOM publicly. So I thought that was a bold move, and I'm curious to see if other vendors follow suit. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're just about out of time, I believe. Varun, Greg, any closing remarks?
Look, I think I'll reiterate what I started with, which is I think we need more consistency across organizations and how they view risk between third-party commercial software, but also third-party open source software. I think we really need to kind of up the game in terms of our maturity around testing, validation, and really trying to quantify both security and operational risks. I just don't think as an industry we've matured enough. And I think the attackers are on it. Every single week, you're going to hear about malicious packages, compromised packages. So that door is wide open right now. And I think we need to do a much better job as an industry to raise the bar.
Agreed. And I'll just add on to it. I think the open source community, I think that's going to need to mature and evolve as well. There's some aspects of risk that we're completely dependent on that community to improve upon.
Right on. Yeah, it may take us 6 months to 12 months to come to some consensus about, the level of rigor that we want to put an application through, the testing and the SLAs, remediation, and all of that. And the attackers just go at it. They have at it and they succeed. Well, with that, I think getting cues that we're ready to close. Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
A great conversation.